How's that going to be paid for?
Money on the benefits bill.
The magic money tree?
Yeah, well, if only I could find out where the magic money tree was.
Corbyn's allotment.
I'd be plucking the plums from it right now.
One area that you may be seeing cuts is to the education department. The reports today that the primary school meals could be cut for infants. Now, that was a policy rolling them out in April. Maybe they get dance, music, PE lessons, and maybe even girls' sanitary products in loos. Now, earlier today, Rachel Reeves was asked about this, and here's what she had to say.
Well, this government is rolling out free breakfast clubs in all primary schools from April. I don't recognise those claims that the government are looking at means testing free school meals. In fact, this government are ensuring that all children get a good start to the day with a breakfast club, helping working parents and helping all children get a good start in life. That's what this government is determined to do after 14 years of Conservative failure.
There you have it there. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, saying she doesn't recognise the claims. Number 10 says it's not something we're looking at. They won't deny it. And, of course, this conversation about cuts to budgets isn't really about Wednesday. It's about later this summer when we get the 3-year spending review. So this battle over how we spend money in this country just started.
Well, Martin, can I just say, it looks to me as though GBNews is actually setting the agenda here. You've been saying for years we've got an overweight, a ballooning civil service, a Whitehall civil... You know, we're actually doing something about it. Give us some credit.
Actually, Stephen Pound, I think you've got a good point. And we have...
Steady on, mate.
And we have said on the show repeatedly, actually, in some senses, the Labour Party are acting more Conservative than the Conservative Party. And, in fact, even former Tory health ministers saying, I wish we'd have thought of scrapping NHS England. And no doubt a lot of Conservative voters would also say, yeah, great, we're cutting the bloated civil service. But the Labour Party never promised to do that. That's the point. It's about hypocrisy. They said no more austerity, and that is what we're getting.
Martin, look, you lift the bonnet of the new car you buy and you look at the engine. You don't know what the engine looks like till you've lifted it. Let's be honest about this. And look at the other thing. We're saving money on getting this senseless duplication on NHS England. Also, don't forget, with rail, all the different rail franchises competing against each other. Are you honestly telling me that it's easier to travel by train now than it was 10 years ago? It isn't. And so we're getting rid of all that. There's ludicrous overlapping layers of duplication. You know, and I have to say, let's give GBNews some credit here.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I would happily point out some other stuff for you which may not fall quite so nicely on your fertile soil. Report out by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation at the weekend, hardly a right-wing think tank. They stick up for the impoverished since the 1900s. They said that all Brits will be worse off by 2030 at this direction of travel, with the poorest hit the hardest. Every household £1,400 worse off, with the poorest £900 worse off, 6% of their entire income, because of things like energy bills, taxation rises, national insurance, slower pay rises because of national insurance rises. These are all Labour Party policies, and they're going to impact the pounds and the pence, Mr. Pound, in the voters' wallets.
Martin, look, this is a theoretical projection. I mean, I was good with the Mr. Pound stuff. You know, look, they used to call me Mr. Euro when I was back in Parliament. But look, the reality is, anybody can project what's going to be like. I could say in 4 years' time it'll be milk and honey, you know, everywhere, and the beer will be down to £2 a pint. You know, who knows? But at the moment, what the Joseph Rowntree Trust is saying is, on the worst possible scenario, in the next 4 years, there could be this figure, which will, quite rightly, impact on the lower earners first, simply because it always does.
But, Stephen Pound, haven't the choices made by the government you support led to where we are now? This huge increase in taxation in that budget, and now we're looking at this growth as being stifled. You've got national insurance going up next week by 2% for employers, while minimum wage rises. A big squeeze, particularly for hospitality and other sectors.
But the strange thing about the minimum wage is when Gordon Brown brought in the minimum wage, I remember the Tories, the CBI, were screaming like mad, saying this will actually kill. In actual fact, it actually stops people undercutting. The minimum wage is a sensible and serious economics. It did not have the apocalyptic consequence that everybody said it would. So let's leave that. The National Insurance Fund, Labour Party promised we wouldn't increase personal taxation or VAT, and we've not. We've kept that promise. But the money has to come from somewhere.
Employers, the employers are saying it is an employment tax, it's a jobs tax, because they can hire less people, they'll give them less pay rises, and their margins will be trimmed, and therefore prices get forced upwards. And talking of which, you can't even drink to forget. anymore. £5 a pint is going to be the new normal. And once again, the British Beer and Pub Association are laying this at the foot of the government. Because of the minimum wage, because of the national insurance, because we've got the most expensive energy in the entire world, the price of a pint's going through.
Well, hang on a second. I mean, we've just had somebody on GBNews saying that, you can't exclude, leaving the European Union on this. But the reality is those figures are national figures. It's higher and lower in different parts. Come to the Royal British Legion Greenford and you get a pint for £3.60.
That's quite a lot.
I know it is for the Legion, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Our members aren't happy. But look, this is one particular aspect. If the average price of a pint does go up to £5, I'm not happy about that, even though it's Lent and I'm not in the game at the moment. But you can't actually say that this is the government's fault, can you?
Well, you can say that national insurance...
It wouldn't be the variation.
Well, hang on. You can say that national insurance hikes. You can say that minimum wage hikes. You can say that the cost of the supply chain through energy hikes, which, as I said, we've got the most expensive electricity in the Western world, are due to a lack of government planning, not just the Labour Party. Successive governments, we've got terribly expensive energy, and windmills aren't the answer.
Well, in that case, why do we get this huge variation in price? Why is it cheaper? Is it more expensive in the southeast than it is in the northeast? Because it's the same national insurance across the whole of the country. Therefore, it should be the same impact. It isn't.
Chris.
Yeah, it's hard. The pressure, though, I think, it's setting aside the beer cost, but this is the cost of paying rent to the buildings they're in for these pubs, and also concerned about the rates for the council's charge. Yeah,
well, hang on a second. I mean, I can remember there's been at least 3 inquiries into tied houses and about the pubcos, and every single one has said that the huge brewing, these massive, great megalo companies who actually control most of the pubs in this country, they're the ones who are setting the price. They're the ones who, don't forget, they put the price of beer up 2 months ago. This isn't a new thing. They've been putting the price up for quite a long time, citing all sorts of supply chain issues. I think the idea that we have this sort of independent pub that is a free house and buy the beer whenever they want doesn't exist anymore. I mean, at the Legion, we actually buy the beer in competitively. We actually bid and undercut,
But on a serious point, back to this spring statement, an emergency budget, whatever you want to call it, the runes... The messages aren't looking good for the Labour Party. Even you have to admit, no, this is not a good look for the Labour Party. They promised the world, and when reality bites, people are feeling harder up.
I think that's absolutely true, and I can't argue with that. And this is getting back to Ronald Reagan's famous thing. He won the election by saying, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" But do you feel better off than you were 4 years ago? It's going to be tough at the moment. I don't think anybody can deny that. But you could have the best, finest economists, the greatest politicians anywhere in the world, and anyone facing with what we faced in May on July last year would have to make some pretty damn tough decisions. It ain't going to be easy.
No.
But let's face it. It's the alternative is that smoking ruin of the economy that Liz Truss left.
Yeah. The biggest insult, surely, I mean, is the small boats crossings. You've got the bills here, £145 a night to have to put these people arriving up in hotels, £14 in a B&B or a house, 38,000 now in hotels, 5.5 million a day. Figures a record ever for this time of the year.
Well, don't get me to I don't try to defend this, and I think actually it was specious to say that the 1.5 billion house building programme is for immigrants. That isn't the case at all. Look, what we need to do is to process these people. We're not going to send women back to Afghanistan who've come over here. It doesn't matter how they get here. We ain't going to do it. You wouldn't do it. None of us will.
I mean, the reality is, if only the votes were full of young women, that's not the case.
Well, the young single men from Albania, I'm putting them in the back of my car and running down tomorrow.
We have to move on. We will be covering that topic in the next segment. Stephen Pound, beautiful. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Chris Oak, always a pleasure. Of course. Now then, we want to make your spring spectacular. Our latest Great British giveaway with your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. It's the Lucky Sevens. And here's all the details you need to enter.
That'll fix the economy.
Spring has sprung with a Great British giveaway, and we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, coming out, the Treasury has admitted that migrants will be housed in hotels and other temporary accommodation for some years to come, despite previous pledges from the Prime Minister to end their use. Another U-turn, this time in the Channel. More on this next from me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the Spring Statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
Welcome back. Time is 3:27 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the government has admitted that migrant hotels will need to be used for years to come, despite their election pledge, of course, to scrap them. And a new Treasury report also finds that hotels have made record profits from government contracts, housing around 38,000 migrants. And that's not including the additional 66,000 others who are being housed in other forms of accommodation. And how the government planning to end the use of hotels? Well, now it looks like they'll simply allocate some of the 1.5 million new homes they're planning to build. Another day where the lunatics have taken over the asylum system. Let's speak now with GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, a 4-star hotel for a newly arrived illegal is one thing, but to give a new build to a new arrival takes the biscuit.
Yeah, I mean, even if they don't get a new build, it's still going to potentially impact those that might have moved into the accommodation that someone who's gone into the new build is then taking up. So, yes, there's a knock-on effect there. We've had 1,500 migrants who've come across the Channel in just the past 6 days, adding to the numbers who will need to be put in the hotels. In fact, we can show you some video now of one of the latest arrivals. Many of them who cross have this desire to, those are the wrong images. We just want to show you the shots of the migrant who came across the Channel trying to get into hotel accommodation. He came through from Afghanistan. That's him there. You can see him on the boat doing as so many of them do, which is posting their dainty little social media videos there, and that's him making that journey. And here is him in his hotel room at an average cost of £145 a night for these migrant hotels now, with 1,500 having crossed. That's almost £250,000 just for the last cohort who came across. And you can see all the flags on the left-hand side of the screen there. These are the countries that he's been through. Afghanistan to Pakistan, India, Turkey's gone to the Western Balkans, as well as then coming across Italy, Switzerland, through France, and eventually to the UK, now settled into that hotel. And that, of course, will anger many people who see the money that we're having to expend on the hotels. Something else that's going to, I'm sure, raise the hackles of our audience are these images. This is Le Touquet on the French side of the Channel, and this is the practice of taxi boats, which is something really that's shot to prominence in the last year or so. The boats, the small boats, come in to the shore. The migrants wade out to get onto these small boats. But what's I think key about this is you can see the French police launch just off the shore as well, to the left-hand side of that shot, the migrant boat on the right-hand side of the image there. And it's doing nothing, absolutely nothing to intervene and to try to push that migrant boat back to shore. Now, this comes just weeks after the French Interior Minister met with Yvette Cooper in Le Touquet and spoke about the need to change the law so that they could intervene to do just what we're talking about there, to use that police launch to get in close to that boat and to push it ashore. Because the fact is, you can see by the dozens of migrants who are out there, they're up to their waist in water, but that's it. And that shallow sort of sea continues for quite a bit out there. So the French want to be able to push the migrant boats back. But clearly, despite what the Interior Minister has said he wants to do, that's not happening. This imagery was just taken yesterday, and it shows the continuation of this practice, Martin, of the taxi boat coming into shore, of migrants just wading out there, and the only people in the water are French rescue services there in case some of the migrants should get into trouble as they try to clamber aboard those small boats.
You know, Mark White, these videos make an absolute mockery. They make an absolute mockery of what the United Kingdom has become. Look at them. They're up to their waists in water. I've had deeper baths than that, Mark White. I've been in deeper swimming pools than that, and they're getting ferried into British waters by waiting vessels. It's farcical. It's utterly farcical, and every single one of those asylum seekers costs British taxpayer £41,000 per year. New figures out today from the Public Policy Research, the Institute for Public Policy Research. Mark White, absolutely astonishing. And yeah, I bet you a lot of people watching at home just aren't surprised anymore. This is the new normal. Mark, incredible pictures. Thank you very, very much for getting them and talking them through as was on the show today. Mark White, thank you very much. Let's come back to Chris Hope, who's still in the studio with me. We're expecting to hear from the government any moment now. Chris, on the Heathrow shutdown on Friday, many people, of course, saying another situation where Britain was just the laughingstock of the world.
Clarity, hopefully, from Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary. Was Heathrow reliant on that single substation, or were there two more? We've heard overnight, I think, from other bodies linked to this, saying that you could actually transfer power to the other two substations. Why did that happen? Why was it necessary to cancel over 1,000 flights? Why were people stranded across the world, missing key events in their lives? Is it Heathrow's fault? And, you know, who's to blame for this? And we heard reports over the weekend, actually, there was plenty of power on the national grid to keep the entire airport going, but it was a decision to close the whole thing down on grounds of safety. We heard that the airport chief went to bed halfway through the night. Would you go to bed if your entire business was shut down? I wouldn't sleep for long. I'd be worrying about this flaming torch next to the airport I'm in charge of. Today, Number 10 was asked about that. There's no comment about the Heathrow CEO reportedly going to bed, and he praised, I think, his team for how they reacted to it. Well, frankly, what we know so far is why couldn't they go to an alternative power source? News shortly from Heidi Alexander.
OK, thank you very much. You get yourself off the lobby, Chris Hope. I know you're busy, and we'll get that speech as it happens very shortly. But first, here's your news headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin. Good afternoon to you. Our headlines: unions say as many as 50,000 people could lose their jobs as a result of the government cuts to the civil service. Now, Rachel Reeves has confirmed departments will be asked to cut 15% from their budget as the government tries to save £2.2 billion a year by the end of this Parliament, by 2030, although she claims only 10,000 jobs will be at risk. Well, the Chancellor says the civil service grew during the COVID pandemic and plans to make cuts to back office functions. The leader of the biggest civil service union says those cuts will hit frontline services after years of underfunding by Conservative governments. Well, Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffiths says the UK is facing a return to austerity.
The Chancellor's made some terrible decisions in her first budget. She absolutely clobbered business, 40 billion of tax rises, particularly on jobs, that national insurance jobs tax. And what that has meant is that business confidence was devastated, unemployment starting to rise, and now we're going to get this week lower growth forecasts for the UK. That's going to hit us all. Last time she was hitting farmers and pensioners and small businesses. This time around, it sounds like it's going to be disabled people on welfare and civil servants.
Morrison says hundreds of jobs are at risk as it continues to cut costs and restructure the business. The supermarket is planning to close 17 convenience stores and a range of on-site services, including cafes, pharmacies and meat counters. It says 365 jobs are at risk over the next 4 months, but claims the majority of workers affected are expected to be moved into other roles. Governments admitted using hotels to house migrants will continue for years, despite their election pledge to scrap the policy. A document published by the Treasury's blamed global instability. The report found hotels have made record profits from government contracts, housing around 38,000 migrants. That doesn't include an additional 66,000 who are being housed in other forms of accommodation. Well, shortly after the election, the Chancellor claimed a £4.6 billion overspend on migrant hotels formed part of the £22 billion black hole that they inherited from the Conservatives. Well, that comes as the body of a migrant has been found near a beach in Calais. The discovery was made this morning near the French port. Early reports suggest the body is a female migrant of Eritrean origin. It is the 5th confirmed death this year. An investigation is underway to determine the cause. The government says bird flu's been detected in a sheep in England for the first time. The single case was identified in Yorkshire during a routine check of livestock on a premises where the H5N1 virus, also known as avian flu, had previously been confirmed. No further infection of the virus was detected in that flock. That's according to the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And the average price of a pint of beer is set to go past £5 for the first time due to cost hikes hitting the sector next month. Pub sector chiefs have warned prices for customers will have to go up in order to keep venues afloat. The British Beer and Pub Association says the average cost of a pint is expected to go up by about 21 pence as a result. The research showed pub firms likely to raise the price from £4.80 to £5.01. Let me tell you, that is still a bargain for a pint in London. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in about half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In West Yorkshire, the M62 is partly blocked westbound after a collision. That's happened between Brighouse at junction 25 and junction 24 for Ainley Top. In Lancashire, the M65 westbound is partly blocked after a vehicle caught fire, and that's just by junction 10, the turn-off for Burnley, and the A671. And in Manchester, the M67 westbound is slow after a collision earlier between junction 2 for Denton and junction 1 for the A57.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, this is Chris.
This is
Biggins.
the Botticelli's Venus.
Well,
right?
this gets me incensed. This is unbelievable.
Right.
Woke union chiefs.
No, but there we are. There's the famous
have
painting.
said that this must be taken down.
The birth of Venus.
This must not be watched. You mustn't look at this.
And there's a trigger warning.
Trigger warning.
As well, right?
Yes.
And I don't know who's put the trigger warning on this. Is it the museum where it's held, or
Some union chiefs.
Oh, right.
Woke union chiefs. I mean, this is
so
just...
what is the offence now with that? What?
You can see her belly button.
Oh.
And a little bit of her titties. I mean, it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah, the trigger warning is that this painting may involve nudity. Well, it is a Botticelli, it is Venus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to involve nudity.
And there are lots of wonderful paintings that involve nudity. You can't suddenly say now, in 25, you can't look at these.
You'd have to shut down every art gallery in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it would be ridiculous.
We are living in 1984 now, aren't we? I mean, not literally the year, but the whole censorship thing. It's like groupthink, you must do this, you must do that. You can't have independent thought.
Yeah.
You can't look at works of art in case you start thinking the wrong way.
It's just like newsflash, classical paintings will probably have nudity in them.
Yes.
You're right. Angling, and
And compared to what you can see on Instagram.
Well, yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:41 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. The father of a rape gang victim from Oldham has spoken exclusively to GB News about his daughter's abuse ordeal. She was subjected to violent sexual abuse and exploitation by 85 men across 3 years. And here's a bit of what she had to say to our national reporter, Charlie Peters.
Upset because it weren't my daughter. I so much wanted it to be. It'd be over.
But you'd been a hero to somebody else's daughter. You saved her.
It don't count. I know it should, but it don't.
It's heartbreaking stuff. We can now speak with GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, it's such difficult viewing and listening, but essential to keep this going. And one of the many reasons you're up for the Trick Award News Presenter of the Year for this excellent work. But tell us more about this exclusive for GB News today.
Well, Martin, what you've just seen and heard there is the father of a grooming gang victim describing an incident where he had gone out trying to rescue her from the abuse gangs. He had actually found another girl who was on the verge of appalling exploitation. What I was trying to explain to him was you'd been a hero, you'd saved somebody's daughter, but he was heartbroken because his daughter was still out there, still being exploited. And John, not his real name, took us around the streets in Oldham that he spent many, many nights with his friends, desperately searching for her, desperately hunting around the notorious haunts where many of these groups of men, predominantly from the town's Pakistani population, were organising and abusing children, particularly girls, and many of them from the care homes, the children's care homes in the local area, which is where Jade is from. Jade, also not her real name, spoke to us about
Charlie, we have to leave it there. We have to cross to the Commons because the government is making mistakes in the Heathrow
operations on Friday the 21st of March. I would like to begin by acknowledging the disruption to everyone affected by this incident. Many homes, schools and businesses temporarily lost power. Some families had to evacuate their homes, and many thousands have had their travel plans impacted. I also want to thank the firefighters and emergency responders who worked in very difficult conditions to put the fire out, as well as Heathrow, the National Grid, and all other public services involved who work so hard to get power back on and people back travelling again. This was an unprecedented event, and we must learn any and all lessons we can to ensure that it does not reoccur in future. Let me begin by setting out what we currently know about the cause of the incident. A large fire broke out at North Hyde substation at 11:30 p.m. on Thursday the 20th of March and was brought under control the following day. Due to the impacts, Heathrow Airport announced at 4:30 a.m. on Friday that it would close until midnight that day. Power was restored to domestic customers in a matter of hours, after the operator of the local distribution network, SSEN, redistributed power through other parts of the network. By comparison, Heathrow is one of the country's biggest consumers of electricity. It requires as much power as a small city. What we know is that there was an unprecedented outage and that it wasn't the result of a single point of failure on the electricity transmission or distribution system. The feed from North Hyde substation is one of 3 supply points to Heathrow, and the fire caused exceptional damage that took the whole substation out of service. The other supply points continued supplying to Heathrow Airport throughout the incident. Heathrow's view was that this supply was insufficient to ensure the safe and secure ongoing operation of all systems across the whole airport. It proceeded to reconfigure its internal electricity network to enable the resumption of full operations utilising the 2 other external supply points. This required hundreds of systems to be safely powered down and then safely powered up with extensive testing. The airport has a range of backup generators and uninterruptible power supplies, including diesel generators, to provide power to essential systems to enable them to safely land planes. These backup systems ensured safety and security systems and protocols were maintained at all times, but they were never designed to support full operation of the whole airport. By 12:30 on Friday afternoon, Heathrow began restarting systems to ensure they were safely operating. By 4 p.m, the airport was 100% confident that all systems were safely operating across the whole network and announced that some flights would be able to restart that day. The first flights from about 6 p.m. were so-called positioning flights, which were to get aircraft and crew to the right places to resume normal operations the following day. This was then followed by flights diverted to UK and non-UK airports to allow passengers to be repatriated and a small number of outbound long-haul flights. Mr. Speaker, since Saturday, Heathrow has been fully operational with over 250,000 passengers able to fly to and from the airport on Saturday. Due to knock-on impacts of the event, there continued to be some delays and cancellations over the weekend. Overall, the impact of Heathrow's closure led to over 1,300 flights and more than 200,000 passengers having their flights cancelled or diverted on Friday, and a further 110 cancelled on Saturday. The government is acutely aware of the need to ensure that passengers are well looked after and their consumer rights are protected. This is why UK law ensures that airlines must provide passengers with a refund within 7 days or to be rerouted to their destination under the same conditions. We are closely monitoring to ensure that passengers are properly supported. To support the recovery, my department temporarily lifted restrictions on overnight flights to ease congestion. Heathrow and airlines also added extra capacity into the system to help affected passengers. We also allowed rail tickets to be used flexibly to help passengers who were not able to use their original tickets. Mr. Speaker, regarding the cause of the fire, the Metropolitan Police confirmed that the fire is not believed to be suspicious. However, due to the location of the substation and the impact this incident has had on critical national infrastructure, the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command are leading our inquiries into this matter. This is due to the specialist resource and capabilities within that command, which can assist in progressing this investigation at pace to help minimise disruption and identify the cause. It would not be appropriate to comment further whilst these investigations continue, but we will of course update the House once it is appropriate to do so. Mr. Speaker, whilst it is positive that electricity supplies were restored quickly, there will of course be learnings to ensure we avoid such incidents from reoccurring. That is why on Saturday, my Right Honourable friend, the Energy Secretary, working with Ofgem, commissioned the Independent National Energy Systems Operator, NESO, to urgently investigate this incident. The review will also seek to understand any wider lessons to be learned for energy resilience for critical national infrastructure. NESO have been asked to report back to DESNZ with initial findings within 6 weeks. In addition, Heathrow has asked Ruth Kelly, former Secretary of State for Transport and an independent member of Heathrow's board, to undertake a review of its internal resilience. The Kelly review will analyse the robustness and execution of Heathrow's crisis management plans, the airport's response and how it recovered the operation. While colleagues across the House will appreciate that we do not yet know everything there is to know about this incident, I will try to answer questions from honourable members with as much detail as possible based on the latest information I have at my disposal. I commend this statement to the House.
Secretary of State Gareth Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank the Secretary of State for her statement and for advance sight of it. I would also like to join her in extending my gratitude to the firefighters who responded so swiftly to this incident, and I would like to extend my sympathies to everybody affected by the disruption and to place on record my thanks to all those at Heathrow who worked diligently to ensure that the airport came back online over the weekend. Mr. Speaker, the loss of power in the Heathrow area caused significant disruption for thousands of travellers and countless businesses. Heathrow Airport, one of the world's busiest airports and Europe's busiest air hub, was scheduled to handle 1,351 flights on Friday, carrying up to 291,000 passengers. However, as we know, the fire at a nearby electrical substation forced planes to be diverted to other airports, with many long-haul flights returning to their points of departure. The financial cost of this shutdown to the airline industry is expected to be to total tens of millions of pounds, with significant question marks over the airport's possible vulnerability to further disruption in the future. Before we discuss the specifics of the incident, I would like to ask the Secretary of State to confirm that she will remain engaged with Heathrow, the airlines and other key stakeholders throughout this period to minimise the impact on passengers and the economy. Turning to the government's response, I note that the Secretary of State for Energy, who I'm pleased to see in his place this afternoon, has instructed the National Energy Systems Operator to urgently investigate this incident. It is crucial that NESO's investigation delivers a clear and objective assessment of the incident's circumstances and the UK's broader energy resilience. So I would ask that the government keep the House informed as this investigation develops. I also note that the Secretary of State for Transport will be closely monitoring Heathrow's internal investigation into this incident. She is right to do so. While I trust that she will share any conclusions drawn from the report with the House, I would ask her today to provide the specific assurance that she will indeed do so. Focusing on the details of this incident, it is evident that it raises significant concerns about the resilience of Heathrow Airport and in particular, and critical infrastructure in general. Regarding Heathrow's resilience, important questions are raised about why the airport was dependent on a single electrical substation.
That was the Energy Secretary, Transport Minister, beg your pardon, Heidi Alexander initially, and then Gareth Bacon responding from the opposition. Ed Miliband watching on in the background. Ms Alexander started by saying, I'd like to apologise to all impacted by the Heathrow outage and thanks to all of the firefighters, called it an unprecedented event. And of course, we now have to look at everything. Power was restored to domestic customers in a matter of hours. But the airports, crucially, that didn't happen. Heathrow requires as much power as a small city, she went on to say. And she then said the backup was never designed to supply full backup to the entire airport. That's a massive question that needs to be answered. How can it be that a single generator went down and diesel generators were relied upon? The Metropolitan Police confirmed that the fire is not believed to be suspicious at present, although counter-terror police are leading it because it is a critical piece of national infrastructure. Then we can expect a report, the results of which within 6 weeks. The Caddy Review will look at the incident and give full answers. I wonder if that will satisfy those thousands of people impacted and stranded. Now, plenty more coming up, including our Labour, the party of broken promises. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. But now's your weather with Honour.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tonight, it should remain largely dry across the south, but with the clear skies, that means we can expect some mist and fog by the morning. A different story in the north, though. Cloud and outbreaks of rain moving in here as a result of this frontal system, just starting to edge into western parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland into this afternoon. So more cloud here, some outbreaks of rain, largely light, but we could see the odd heavier outbreak across exposed coasts and hills. And this area of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southeastwards through the course of the night, moving into northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales through the early hours of the morning. But across the south and southeast, remaining largely dry, but with clear spells, likely to see some mist and fog through the morning. So most of the rain across Scotland should clear by the time we reach the early hours of the morning, but we can't rule out a few showers just skirting their way northwards across Scotland. Quite blustery here by the morning too. Across Northern Ireland, quite a murky start, some quite low cloud, some pretty grey skies by the time we reach the morning. And similar across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, cloud and some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. But across the south and southeast, a fairly bright start to the day and any mist and fog clearing quite quickly too. But this band of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southwards through the course of the morning, so any bright skies soon being replaced by cloudier ones, but any rain largely petering away by the afternoon. And to the north of this, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, some sunny spells breaking through the cloud too, and highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so feeling pleasant in the warm spring sunshine, and still rather mild across the south too, highs of 15 degrees here. Into the evening, any remnants of cloud and rain eventually clearing to the southeast, leaving largely clear skies over into the overnight period. So turning quite frosty, and once again we could see some mist and fog. And it's likely we're going to see more rain by the end of the week and turning quite windy too, and temperatures returning more towards average.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24, sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Lancashire, the M65 westbound is shut. That's after a vehicle caught fire at junction 10 for Burnley and the A671 turn-off. In West Yorkshire, the M62 is queuing westbound after a collision between junction 25 at Brighouse and 24 for Ainley Top. And in Cheshire, the M56 is partly blocked eastbound. That's after a breakdown. It's just by junction 10, the turn-off for Stretton and the A49, so do expect a small queue.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24, sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. on this Monday afternoon. And welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, before the general election, do you remember that the Labour Party promised no more austerity? And yet today, Rachel Reeves is eyeing up £4 billion worth of public sector cuts. Free school dinners are expected to be axed, with U-turns on practically every general election pledge, or Labour the party of broken promises. And talking of which, Labour also promised to end asylum hotels, and yet today they admitted that they are here for years to come at a cost of £5.5 million every single day. And worse, the government admitted that building 1.5 million homes will help solve the asylum crisis. Did you remember voting for new builds for new asylum seeker arrivals? And controversial mixed martial arts fighter Conor McGregor has announced that he wants to be the president of Ireland, just a week after Donald Trump called him my favourite Irishman. Could the Notorious deliver a knockout blow to the political establishment and help make Ireland great again? And beer drinkers are foaming at the mouth after the British Beer and Pub Association today admitted that the average price of a pint of beer will soon top £5 nationwide. Hospitality head honchos have blasted the government must look at ways to keep pints affordable. Sobering news. That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. Also in this hour, do you support the notion of facial recognition cameras being a permanent fixture on Britain's streets? They're introducing two in Croydon for 2 years, the dubious honour of being the murder capital of London. The cameras are being introduced to help clamp down on rapists, killers, drug dealers, robbers and thieves in the postcode. Civil rights people are up in arms, saying it's an invasion of our civil liberties. We're all being spied on by eyes in the sky. Or is it actually a sad sign of the times, a necessary price to pay to keep us safe? Criminals don't play by the rules. The rules have changed. The streets have changed. Do we need more facial recognition cameras in place to help keep your community safe? Get in touch, let me know your thoughts. GBNews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines, and here's Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Martin. Good afternoon to you. Our top stories. The Prime Minister has vowed to take some money out of the government in this week's spring statement, as unions warn that 50,000 jobs could be cut from the civil service. The Chancellor has confirmed departments will be asked to cut 15% from their budget to save £2.2 billion a year by 2030, although she claims only 10,000 back office jobs are at risk. Well, the unions are saying any cuts will hit frontline services after years of underfunding by the Conservatives. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffiths says the UK is facing a return to austerity.
The Chancellor's made some terrible decisions in her first budget. She absolutely clobbered business, 40 billion of tax rises, particularly on jobs, that national insurance jobs tax. And what that has meant is that business confidence was devastated, unemployment starting to rise, and now we're going to get this week lower growth forecasts for the UK. That's going to hit us all. Last time she was hitting farmers and pensioners and small businesses. This time around, it sounds like it's going to be disabled people on welfare and civil servants.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor has swerved questions about whether the UK is considering ditching a tax on big tech companies as part of a deal to appease President Trump and avoid US tariffs. It brings in around £800 million a year.
The digital services tax is hugely important. It brings in around £800 million a year and ensures that companies pay tax in the country that they are operating in. So we will continue to make sure that businesses pay their fair share of tax, including businesses in the digital sector.
Morrison says hundreds of jobs are at risk as it continues to cut costs and restructure the business. The supermarket is planning to close 17 convenience stores and a range of on-site services, including cafes, pharmacies and meat counters. It says 365 jobs are at risk over the next 4 months, but the supermarket claims the majority of those affected are expected to be moved into other roles. English councils are to be ranked on how efficiently they fix potholes, and those that don't publish updates will miss out on millions in funding. From the middle of next month, local authorities across England will get an extra £500 million for road maintenance, but councils will lose a quarter of that if they fail to put out annual progress reports. The Prime Minister says there must be accountability in the system, and Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander agrees. The government has admitted using hotels to house migrants will continue for years, despite their election pledge to scrap them. A document published by the Treasury has blamed global instability. The report has found hotels have made record profits from government contracts, housing around 38,000 migrants. Now, that doesn't include an additional 66,000 who are being housed in other forms of accommodation. Well, shortly after the election, Rachel Reeves claimed £4.6 billion was being overspent on migrant holes, which formed part of that £22 billion black hole that the Labour Party inherited from the Conservatives. It comes as the body of a migrant has been found near a beach in Calais. The discovery was made early this morning. Reports suggest it is the body of an Eritrean female. It's the fifth confirmed migrant death this year in the Channel. An investigation is underway to determine the cause. And that comes as the number of migrants arriving in the UK, having crossed the Channel, reached a new record for the first 3 months of the year. There have been 5,847 arrivals so far, including 355 yesterday, that's according to Home Office figures. And as you've been hearing, the average price of a pint set to surge past £5 for the first time due to cost hikes hitting the sector next month. Pub owners are warning that prices for customers will have to go up to keep venues operating in the face of higher labour costs. Now, the British Beer and Pub Association say the average cost, well, it's likely to go up by around 21 pence as a result. So that will lift the average pint from £4.80 to just over £5. Those are the latest headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Now cast your mind back to before the general election. Do you remember when the Labour Party promised no more austerity? Well, however, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is today eyeing up £4 billion in public sector cuts in her spring statement, which is due, of course, on Wednesday. And now we learn also today that asylum hotels won't end at all, despite that election promise. And instead, they'll continue for years to come. So with U-turns on practically every election pledge, or Labour, the party of broken promises. Well, I'm joined now in the studio in Westminster by the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. Kevin, welcome to the studio. Got to say, it's starting to become a bit of a bad look, isn't it? We promised before the election no more austerity, no return to the George Osborne days, the nasty old days of the grasping Tories who destroyed the country, left a £22 billion black hole. That was the script. And now reality bites. £4 billion in cuts. And today we're hearing even about free school meals being axed. That's straight out of the copybook of Maggie Thatcher, Milk Snatcher. Are the Labour Party just doing U-turns on practically everything?
That's certainly the way it looks, and the pressure really is building. We've only got 48 hours to wait to find out what Rachel Reeves is going to say. But yeah, you're right, it looks as though... now, they will say it's not austerity because the overall amount of money that the government is spending is going up. However, if you're taking £5 billion out of the welfare bill, you're cutting disability benefits, you're looking to make cuts on unprotected departments all across Whitehall, I think people can reasonably say, well, it sounds an awful lot like austerity to me, because these are frontline public services and people will notice, you know, if there's going to be spending cuts there. Civil service, looking to cut the size of the civil service around about 15%. Again, these are people that help to deliver frontline public services, so, you know, people will notice that type of thing if indeed she's able to push through cuts of that nature.
And Kevin, it does feel astonishingly as if the Labour Party are acting more conservative than the Conservative Party. A lot of these things are straight out of the copybook of what you'd expect the Conservatives to have done. And at the weekend as well, some figures came out from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, hardly a right-wing think tank. You know, they've supported the working classes for over a century. Their report said the average family will be £1,400 worse off during the term of this Parliament, with the poorest the hardest hit. Do you think that this can go on much longer? This isn't what we were promised. This wasn't on the tin.
No, we were told change, weren't we? We were told that the Conservatives had ruined the country after 14 years, vote for Labour and things would get better. They were pretty vague on the details, and now we know why, because it doesn't seem as if there were terribly many plans or details in the background. And there was a question put to Rachel Reeves yesterday on one of her interviews was, you know, are you really a Labour Chancellor? Because, you know, as you say, spending cuts everywhere you look. I remember when George Osborne did this, Labour's argument was you can't cut your way to economic growth. But that seems to be precisely what Labour are doing. We're still told that economic growth is their number one mission. but that's going to be downgraded on Wednesday as well by half to 1% instead of 2% this year. So really, she seems to be running out of road.
And Kevin, another thing that popped my eyes today was there's a digital tax break for US tech billionaire companies. So at the moment, there's a 2% tax levy on the US big tech firms. The digital services tax, it raises £800 million a year. But now, because of a fear about trade wars with Trump, Labour are cutting taxes to tech billionaires while cutting public services. Again, I put it to you, they sound like a right-wing party. It's incredible.
It's a terrible look. Now, this tax raises about £800 million, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of money in government spending terms. However, that pays for an awful lot of nurses, it pays for an awful lot of teachers. It's money that the government could really do with right now. Rachel Reeves today has said that, she values that money, but they're not ruling out giving this tax break or removing this digital services tax, because what they really want is an economic deal with Donald Trump, and they don't want tariffs that he's looking to impose on the EU, Mexico, Canada. We're hoping that if we give him a bit of a sweetener, his friends, e.g. Elon Musk, then he might look favourably. But, you're taking a risk if you're trying to think things logically with Donald Trump, because the guy is so unpredictable.
But nevertheless, tax cuts for Elon Musk, tax cuts for Mark Zuckerberg and for Google, and cuts of school dinners for primary school kids. This must be making a lot of Labour voters and Labour journalists and activists and parliamentarians themselves thinking, hang on a minute, we didn't think this was going to be like this.
Well, yeah, we talk a lot in Westminster about optics, how things look to the public. And if on the one hand you're giving a tax break to tech billionaires while also cutting benefits for some of the poorest people in the country, I think a lot of people on the doorstep are going to say, hang on a minute, as you say, this is what we'd expect maybe from the Conservatives. It's certainly not what we'd expect from a Labour Party. Now, they might manage to get it through right now. They will manage to get it through. They've got a massive majority. But the clock is ticking now. If she doesn't start to produce results in terms of economic growth and putting more money in ordinary people's pockets like they promised to do, then she's in an awful lot of trouble.
Kevin, specifically on the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, to much fanfare, much trumpeting, the first female Chancellor in history. Does anybody care about that anymore? It's about the pounds and the pence in our pocket. The news is thin and gruel. Do you think she might be in trouble?
I mean, if you'd asked me that question 2 or 3 months ago, I would probably have said no, certainly not in the short to medium term. Her and Keir Starmer moved in lockstep together. But ultimately, one thing we do know about Keir Starmer is that he can be ruthless when he needs to be. And if push comes to shove, the economy's not improving, people aren't feeling better off, then I think he could well bite the bullet and get rid of his Chancellor. I don't see it happening, certainly not this year and probably not next year either. But to say that our job is guaranteed for the foreseeable future, I think is not true.
Kevin Schofield, excellent as ever. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Of course, the editor of HuffPost UK. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, farmers today have once again been fuelling up their tractors to take part in the National Say No to the Government Day. Now, the campaign group Farmers to Action are leading that protest, where we can expect tractor convoys all around the UK. In fact, I think there are about 15 or 16 different sites. Now, with inheritance tax proposals rolling out in a couple of weeks, will the government listen at last to Britain's farmers before it's too late, or will they keep ploughing the same old furrow? Let's cross over now to Devon and speak with the farmer and the co-founder of Farmers to Action, Justin Rogers. Justin, welcome to the show. So once again, the tractor boys have been rolling around the country today. Tell us how many of you boys and girls got out, where did you go to, and what's your message?
Hi, Martin. Thank you for having me. We got out all over the country today in, I think, 14 counties with 17 listed different events across the country, which was perfectly headed up by the network that we've built. We've built a digital online network to communicate across the country. And we have targeted and gone straight to marginal Labour seating and Labour councils, which are up for election this year. And we are basically looking at the idea of deconstructing this Labour government from the ground upwards. And there's nothing that they can do about it now. We are going to keep coming. We're not going to stop. We're going to dismantle them this way. And then depending on what happens in the budget on Wednesday, if anything else bad happens to us, well, then who knows?
And on that precise point, Justin Rogers, there's a lot of talk about red diesel might be going under the spotlight for a tax hike. Red diesel, of course, is for off-road vehicles, such as your tractors, we can see on screen there. You get a favourable tax allowance on that, of course, to help with. Food prices, keeping them down. I believe you pay, 11 pence a litre tax at the moment compared to regular diesel, 58 pence a litre. Do you think that could happen? Another blow on farmers could come on Wednesday?
With this government and the way they are, and listening to your last segment on here as well, there is nothing that we can write off. They have lied. They have attacked us on all fronts to this point. They said there was going to be big changes. They just didn't tell the British public that it was going to be changing for the worst. At this point, I don't think there's anyone that hasn't been targeted. And if they hit red diesel, I think that might be a step too far for the agricultural community, because I don't think there's going to be much left after that.
And Justin Rogers, I know we talk about this often. When you say a step too far, how do you mean? I mean, at the moment you're still, jollily pootling about the countryside. It looks beautiful. You're getting positive reaction. The public seems to be on your side. But are you talking about perhaps a change of tempo, perhaps an escalation in matters?
Well, we definitely can't write on anything off, Martin. And if they go that route, not that the FTA would be direct, but farmers would not be able to be held back any longer, I don't think. There's only so far anyone can be pushed. Farmers are under so much pressure as it is. I know there's trolls over social media that wouldn't agree, but farmers are under so much pressure on such fine margins, and across the country they're feeling pain with all these cuts that have happened so far. It is just pain after pain after pain. Well, at some point you just can't take it anymore. And if you take red diesel away, which, all we do is produce food for the people. That's what we do. Produce really good food for the British public. And we try to do that at a cost-effective method as we can. And if red diesel's gone, well, food price is going to have to go sky high.
And Justin, can you give me like some fag packet numbers? I mean, if this red diesel hike were to come in, I mean, what would it cost you as on your farm extra, per month, per year, just to carry on standing still? And what kind of impact would it have?
I think red diesel, what I saw the other day was at 66 pence a litre, and white diesel I saw on the forecourt earlier on at £1.37. So that's over, that's like over doubling. And every area is different. We all know that. But if it goes down that way, farmers can't. We can't produce. A lot of struggling to produce now at these levels. I know beef price and lamb price is high at the moment, but now the input prices, as in calves, are raising to match the price that are at the other end. So that is only a good point for so long, and then it becomes normal. So you take the red diesel and make it, that's all we'll have to do it on white diesel, and double what we're doing everywhere. It's going to be very painful for the agricultural community.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us today. Justin Rogers there, the co-founder of Farmers to Action on today's protest. Thanks for joining us. Let's get some quick reaction now from you, Kevin Schofield. Thanks for patiently waiting and listening in on that. It would be a step too far, wouldn't it? To raise hikes on red diesel, which of course is the farmers' fuel. And you hear Justin there saying that would be pushing them towards perhaps an escalation in their action.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised, but, we're at a stage now where nothing, I guess, can be ruled out. They'll be going through line by line the Treasury numbers. They'll be coming up with all sorts of money-raising suggestions. This, I dare say, may well be one of them, but you would imagine that politically Rachel Reeves and her advisers would realise that this would, as you say, be a step too far, on top of the inheritance tax changes as well.
Well, the inheritance tax, there's also the land grab, the loss of money over that, if it would be not the actual planning market rate, but the land rate. Do you think farmers have any right to feel that they're just being put upon time after time after time? Or do you think they just need to pay their fair way and that's the grim reality of politics?
No, you can absolutely understand why they feel that they've been unfairly treated, particularly harshly treated. I know there are groups all over. You look at pensioners as well, losing their winter fuel payments. You know, there's other groups which are also feeling pain because of the decision that the government's taken. However, I think farmers, we've seen all the protests that they've had in Westminster for the last few months. I can understand absolutely why they feel put upon. And if further measures were to cut into their bottom line again, then I think you could very well see a step up of those protests.
And Kevin Schofield, thank you for sticking around and giving us your expert opinion as ever. Cheers. Now, let's move on. We want to make your spring spectacular. Our latest Great British Giveaway with your chance to bag an astonishing £17,777 in tax-free cash. The Lucky Sevens. These are the details you need to enter.
You could be the next big winner of the Great British Giveaway, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up next, the Treasury has admitted that migrants will be now housed in hotels and other temporary accommodation for the years to come, despite previous pledges from the Prime Minister to end their use before the next general election. Well, more on this next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great. That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying. That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip? Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
Welcome back. Time is 4:27 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the government has admitted that migrant hotels will now need to be used for years to come, despite their election pledge to scrap them. And a new Treasury report also finds that hotels have made record profits from government contracts, housing around 38,000 migrants. Now, that's not including the additional 66,000 others who are being housed in other forms of accommodation, of course, at full taxpayers' expense. And how are the government planning to end the use of hotels? Well, now it looks like they'll simply allocate some of the 1.5 million new homes they're planning to build to asylum seekers. Well, we can now speak with the founder of the Sanctuary Foundation, Krish Kandiah. Krish, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. Well, they promised us they would end the use of hotels. That hasn't happened. And now the latest plan is some of the 1.5 million new homes built won't be used to house Brits. They'll be used to house asylum seekers. Nobody voted for new builds for new asylum seekers.
Well, Martin, it's a pleasure to be with you. Look, this is an issue. It's not good for anybody for asylum seekers to be housed in hotels. It's not good for our economy. What is it, £5 million a day that could be used in far more productive ways? In fact, a lot of that money is coming from the international aid budget, which is already reduced. So I'm with you that this is a problem, but I think there are some solutions. We noticed that hardly any Ukrainians were put into this kind of accommodation because we allowed the British public to play its part in welcoming and supporting refugees in our homes. And many of your viewers would have been very generous and welcomed Ukrainians. We were able to have 2 different Ukrainian families come and live with us, and that was a great honour and a pleasure. And that didn't cost the taxpayer anything like £5 million a day. So that would be one solution. I think another solution is to allow asylum seekers to work while they're waiting for their asylum claim to be heard. This will actually be a net benefit to our economy, and it's actually good for an asylum seeker. Most of the asylum seekers I've met that are in this kind of accommodation are going mad. They're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to even volunteer in a charity shop, and that's really not good for anyone's mental health.
Krish,
and it's really expensive.
On a serious point, now I know you're a wonderful fella. I know you have a heart of gold. But on a serious point, if illegal immigrants rocking up to British shores on a dinghy were given a free ticket to work, do you think that would decrease or increase the numbers coming over in dinghies every single day? Seriously.
It's a good question.
It would increase, wouldn't it?
I'm up for us trying to smash the criminal gangs that are bringing people here. I'm up for there for being a safe and legal route so people can make their own way here in an appropriate way like we did for our Ukrainian friends. But once someone is in the asylum system and waiting, and they can wait years, it's not good for anyone to have to make them rely on the taxpayer. So let's find another solution.
And Krish, on the topic of drawing up a list of people who will welcome asylum seekers into their homes, as we did with Ukraine, how many people do you think will be willing out there, I don't know, to allow a Syrian or an Afghan into their homes? I suspect the Refugees Welcome Brigade will go pretty quiet at the point when it was, well, let's take one of those people in their spare room or your shed, don't you think?
Well, there's a few answers to that. One is that we actually polled a lot of the people who hosted Ukrainians quite early on in the process, and about 50% were willing to be useful for other groups. And before...
Right.
Yeah,
there we go then. That's the solution. Let's get them in all those people's homes. The taxpayer saves all the money, and the bleeding hearts get a new roommate. Everyone's a winner.
There you go. I think everybody can win in this one, but it is a huge problem that we are leaving people in hotels. It's not good for anybody.
Okay, and that we can agree. It's always a pleasure to have your company. Krish Kandai, the founder of the Sanctuary Foundation. Thank you for joining us today on GB News. Lots more still to come now, between now and 5 o'clock, including controversial mixed martial arts fighter Conor McGregor, who has announced he wants to be the president of Ireland. Well, could the Notorious deliver a knockout blow to the political establishment in the Emerald Isle and make Ireland great again? That's next, but first, here's your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Martin. Just after 4:30, very good afternoon to you. Our top story. The unions say as many as 50,000 people could lose their jobs as a result of government cuts to the civil service. That's 5 times more than previously suggested by ministers, and it would reduce the size of the civil service to levels last seen before the pandemic. Rachel Reeves has confirmed departments are being asked to cut 15% from their budgets to save £2.2 billion a year by 2030. She has claimed only 10,000 jobs will be at risk and will not affect frontline services. Unions say that is not the case. They say those services will be hit after years of underfunding by previous Conservative governments. MP salary is to rise by 2.8% to £94,000 a year. The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority says it's in line with wider pay recommendations for public service workers, public sector workers. However, it comes just a year after they got a 5.5% pay rise and comes shortly before MPs vote on proposed cuts to the welfare bill, which could see an estimated 1 million disabled people lose their benefit. Morrison says hundreds of jobs are at risk as it continues to cut costs and restructure the business. The supermarket's planning to close 17 convenience stores and a range of on-site services like cafes, pharmacies and deli counters. It says 365 jobs are at risk over the next 4 months, but the supermarket claims the majority of workers affected are expected to be moved into other roles. English councils are to be ranked on how efficiently they fix potholes, and those that don't publish updates will miss out on millions of pounds worth of funding. From the middle of next month, local authorities across England will get an extra £500 million for road maintenance, but councils will lose a quarter of that if they don't put out annual progress reports. The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, has said there must be accountability in the system. And the government says bird flu has been detected in a sheep in England for the first time. The single case was identified in Yorkshire during a routine check of livestock on a premises where the H5N1 virus, that's avian flu, had previously been confirmed. No further infection was detected in the flock, according to the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more just after 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
In Lancashire, the M65 is shut westbound after a vehicle fire earlier. It's closed at junction 10 for Burnley and the A671. In West Yorkshire, the M1 southbound is partly blocked after a collision at junction 46, the turn-off for Leeds Colton. And in Manchester, the M602 westbound is partly blocked after a collision. That's happened between junction 3 for the Regent Road roundabout and the A57 and junction 2 for Gilderbrook Road at Trafford Parts. Do expect delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
See, you, Anne, are much more sophisticated than what I am.
Oh, yeah.
So you do like these sort of Fashion Week things? Are you into all that?
What, you mean like London Fashion Week?
Yeah. Do you like that sort of thing?
I used to. I find it all a bit of a bore now. But, I mean, I used to love going along to London Fashion Week. Yeah, because actually sitting there and watching them all on the catwalk, I mean, is quite exciting.
You see, it's just I've seen this in the papers this morning.
Oh.
And it's Paris Fashion Week at the moment. And this designer, Hodakova, who's Swedish.
Oh,
apparently.
know her well.
So there's her latest design.
It's a lady wearing a cello.
Yes, she's wearing a cello, and there's someone else wearing a violin
as a
fascinator.
hat. Now, the violin...
Oh, there you go.
Well, actually, the violin is ridiculous because it's so big.
But the cello... It's
but
just...
why is a lady wearing a cello?
And
I mean, it looks stupid.
It's a second-hand cello.
Well,
so she hasn't designed... What has she designed? Well, she put some Legos in it.
Can't be very comfortable. I mean, how do you sit down in a cello?
And there's no armholes.
No. Honest,
so you can't scratch your nose.
That's how you get a headline, isn't it? But it's not fashion.
But apparently all the models are wearing smudged eyeliner, which looks like someone's done their eyeliner with a Sharpie. And that's
very Bieber, that's
inspired by punk rock.
I used to go to the clothes show in Birmingham. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember the clothes show.
Tim Vincent.
Yes. Yeah, it was a very big deal, but I think those days are a bit over. It's a bit like Meghan's programme on Netflix. Those days are over. Yeah. I mean, it's very, very dated to be pretending to be the perfect hostess and you just spend hours arranging fruit on a plate. It's just not done nowadays. We're all a bit more practical.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:38 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, as part of its attempts to crack down on crime in London, the Metropolitan Police is set to install the UK's first permanent facial recognition cameras in Croydon in South London. They will capture the faces of people on the street in order to help catch alleged criminals by matching them with images they have in their database. And the data will be immediately deleted if there is no match. Now, if the project is successful, the Met hope to extend the cameras to the whole of the capital and perhaps, after that, the rest of the country. So, is this a good way to get criminals off our streets, or is it an attack on our civil liberties? Well, to tell us more is the Senior Advocacy Officer at Big Brother Watch, Madeleine Stone. Madeleine, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. Now, the Met will no doubt say this is a necessary act to clamp down on spiralling crime. Croydon has twice been named the dubious honour of the murder capital of London for knife crime, spiralling drug crime, and this technology has been used to apprehend and arrest rapists and wanted criminals. Is it a good idea or a step too far?
Well, of course, everybody wants to get on top of crime in London, and the police really need to be getting the basics right, I think, before investing huge amounts of money, papering over the cracks of a broken system with a technology that is catastrophic for our civil liberties, for our right to privacy. It basically turns the population of London into walking barcodes. You know, you walk down the street where you work, you socialise, you go out to eat, you go for shopping, and up on every street corner could be, and will be certainly in Croydon, biometric police surveillance that's conducting an ID check. I mean, this is extraordinary. It's the sort of thing we see in China and in Russia, certainly not in democratic, rights-respecting nations like the UK.
Now, Madeleine, people would respond to that by saying, well, the police claim, at least, that the data isn't stored. It's matched in real time via AI to known perpetrators, wanted felons, and police officers will be on the streets at the time the cameras are switched on to apprehend those people in real life, real time. It won't log or store the details of those who aren't known to the police. So does that get around your concerns about capturing people's images if they're not a wanted criminal?
What it does is it scans the faces of every single person who walks in front of a camera. It makes a biometric map of their face and compares them against a police watch list. It is, in reality, no different to the police asking for a fingerprint scan or an ID check of every single person who walks past them. And that's just simply not how we do policing in the UK. We police by consent. You are innocent until proven guilty. What facial recognition does is it reverses that principle. It turns us into a nation of suspects, essentially, that need a police identity check in order to be allowed to carry on about our day. So it's a real seismic shift in how we go about policing here in the UK. And I think the fact that this is being done without any legal protections, there's no law on this. It's never been properly debated in Parliament. The police are really operating in a legal vacuum here. And for such an extraordinary technology that has such profound implications for our rights, it's absolutely unacceptable to be expanding this technology across London, also in Cardiff as well. We've seen it being used in this way without any proper legal safeguards or legislation. The police are really being let off the leash with this, and the government need to urgently get this under control.
Madeline, can I say, I've lived in London for 30 years. I've known Croydon for the vast majority of that. Croydon used to be a fairly dreary place. It was somewhere where you went to live if you couldn't afford to live in London or wanted to live a bit further out. It was a commute about. Crime was next to non-existent, apart from a few punch-ups on a Saturday night, like most suburbs of Britain. But Croydon has radically changed. It's culturally changed. It's a violent place. It's an unsafe place. As I said, murder capital of London, 2 years on the trot. I used to have your opinion. I have to say, I've changed my opinion in 30 years of living in London. I've had to explain to my children so many times about flowers tied around lampposts, dead bodies, in suburbs that never knew anything to do with this kind of crime. London has changed. The people don't play by the rules. These criminals don't care about law and order. On that basis, is there a case to be made? If they won't respect the rules that exist, we should change the rules to nab these scumbags.
Look, I absolutely get it. I've lived in South London for 30 years as well, and I think everyone can agree that policing in London is broken. They're not responding to 999 calls, they're not investigating crimes, but it's absolutely not an either-or situation where the only solution has to be reaching for this dystopian, frankly Orwellian technology. It's not an either-or. There are other things available to police forces that they should be doing long before they start reaching for some of the most authoritarian surveillance tools that we've seen, and as I've said, other democratic countries do their policing without this kind of technology. The kind of countries that we're following in the footsteps of are places like Russia and China. And I don't think, as much as we want to fight crime, there are other ways that don't involve violating the rights and civil liberties of everyone in London.
So, Madeline, Chris Philp, who's the Conservative MP for Croydon South, the area where the cameras will be installed, also as the Shadow Home Secretary, of course, he said this: those people opposing this technology, they need to explain why they don't want those wanted criminals to be arrested, including rapists. What would you say to that?
I mean, as I've said, this is not the only solution. Of course, we all want violent criminals off the street. And frankly, Chris Philp, when he was policing minister, oversaw the kind of collapse of policing in London, some of the worst kind of figures we've seen. We've seen, police not turning up to crimes, as I've said. Reaching for these kinds of shiny sticking plasters are not getting to the heart of the real problems with policing and the real reasons that these crimes have spiralled in London. It's a much more difficult problem than just sticking AI and a camera on it. And of course, I should say as well that this technology can and does go wrong, as we've seen with things like the Horizon post office scandal. When you outsource really important, serious public sector jobs like policing to an algorithm, it can make mistakes, it does make mistakes, and lives can be ruined as a consequence. In fact, we're actually supporting a legal challenge, a guy called Sean Thompson, who volunteered on the streets of London, anti-knife crime worker, working to get young people directed away from crime and getting knife off the streets. He was misidentified as a criminal by the Met's facial recognition technology. He was surrounded by a handful of officers. He wasn't allowed to go until he could do this sort of perverse thing of proving that he wasn't who the camera said he was. That's very, very difficult to do. And this is the danger when you get AI embedded into these really sensitive and important jobs, is that, AI is frankly a blunt tool. And when it goes wrong, very, very hard to unpick that. And, that's Of course, we think this is wrong in terms of the way it violates everyone's privacy, but it can, spectacularly backfire for individuals. And I've seen it happen, sadly, countless times in London, people being wrongly flagged as criminals and having to try and prove their innocence, even children. So this isn't, a kind of magical bullet for the problems we're having with policing. It's going to cause a lot more problems.
Madeleine Stone, excellent conversation. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Beautiful stuff. That really, really is fascinating. That's the Senior Advocacy Officer at Big Brother Watch, Madeleine Stone. Thank you very, very much. What do you make of that? I'm torn on this topic, but I just want scumbags off the streets. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. We'll see some warm sunshine across parts of the Mediterranean over the next few days, but plenty of showers too. And certainly on Tuesday, a mixture of sunshine and showers across the Canaries, across Madeira. Fewer showers across Spain and Portugal, so some sunshine here. But notice across the central part of the Med, plenty of showers, some heavy, even thundery showers around, and brighter skies the further southeast you go across Turkey and Cyprus. Over the next few days, showers mainly in the east, brighter skies the further west you go.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tonight, it should remain largely dry across the south with the clear skies. That means we can expect some mist and fog by the morning. A different story in the north though, cloud and outbreaks of rain moving in here as a result of this frontal system just starting to edge into western parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland into this afternoon. So more cloud here, some outbreaks of rain, largely light, but we could see the odd heavier outbreak across exposed coasts and hills. And this area of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southeastwards through the course of the night, moving into northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales through the early hours of the morning. But across the south and southeast, remaining largely dry, but with clear spells, likely to see some mist and fog through the morning. So most of the rain across Scotland should clear by the time we reach the early hours of the morning, but we can't rule out a few showers just skirting their way northwards across Scotland. Quite blustery here by the morning too. Across Northern Ireland, quite a murky start, some quite low cloud, some pretty grey skies by the time we reach the morning. And similar across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, cloud and some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. But across the south and southeast, a fairly bright start to the day and any mist and fog clearing quite quickly too. But this band of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southwards through the course of the morning, so any bright skies soon being replaced by cloudier ones, but any rain largely petering away by the afternoon. And to the north of this, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, some sunny spells breaking through the cloud too, and highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so feeling pleasant in the warm spring sunshine, and still rather mild across the south too, highs of 15 degrees here. Into the evening, any remnants of cloud and rain eventually clearing to the southeast, leaving largely clear skies over into the overnight period. So turning quite frosty, and once again we could see some mist and fog. And it's likely we're going to see more rain by the end of the week and turning quite windy too, and temperatures returning more towards average.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the former mixed martial arts fighter and champion Conor McGregor has said that he wants to be the next president of Ireland. And he's also said he would put the European Union Migration Pact to a referendum if he were to be elected. Now, as you can see on your screen there, McGregor, who met the US President Donald Trump in the Oval Office last Monday on St. Patrick's Day, he posted on social media that he is greatly opposed to the measure, but it is neither mine nor the government's choice to make. Well, is McGregor for president a bonkers idea, or will he land a glove on the chin of the establishment? Well, let's talk about that now with the president of the Irish Freedom Party, Herman Kelly. Herman, this sounds like something out of a Rocky Balboa movie. A boxing champion meets Donald Trump. He calls him my favourite Irishman on the planet, and now he wants to be the president. Is there any chance on earth this could happen?
Yeah,
and is it a good idea?
Martin, Trump only said that because he hasn't met me yet. Come on, get really. But I tell you what Trump did is that you love my false modesty, don't you? But I tell you what Trump did. He landed a good slug on the chin of the Irish establishment by simply inviting Conor McGregor come to White House. And Conor McGregor did a great deal of service by raising the issue of immigration, mass immigration into Ireland. He raised it up on the world stage, and it's been talked about all over the world. And it's been compounded because an Irish comedian called Garen Noonan raised it in Ireland. Now, he's got 1.7 million followers. Conor McGregor is way bigger than that. But basically, the issue has been raised up on the global stage, and it's been talked about. And this pressure cooker they have in Ireland, the hold of the media establishment that Ireland is twisted by, is feeling the pressure. And you ask, is it simple? It will be very difficult for Conor McGregor to get a nomination. Why? Because it's the nomination process is a bit of an establishment stitch-up. You need 20 parliamentary members to give an assent, or you need 4 county councils. He does have a chance on the 4 county councils. So, look, he does have a very large profile, and he certainly, even by him speaking up, raising the issue of immigration, the economic cost, the cost to the safety and security of our streets, he's already done a great service to the Irish people.
And Herman Kelly, of course, he's not a character without baggage. There have been some legal cases for sexual assault, which he's obviously completely denied. And you're right, they probably will block his ascension to be a candidate. But in terms of that conversation, and we have this often on GB News, which the establishment media in Ireland seems to want to suppress, has Conor McGregor firmly got people talking about the issues which the establishment consider off-piste?
Oh yes, he's got the establishment on the run. They're very worried. I think there were 4 newspaper front-page headlines in the last few days, and they're all talking about, oh, he'll never be nominated. It's changed the narrative from he'll never be nominated to we've got to do everything possible to make sure that he's not nominated. But one thing he will have to do, the court issue in which he was involved, is up and appeal it. He'll have to win that appeal that he has a decent chance. But the Irish establishment are finally feeling the pressure on immigration from ordinary people. And when a global figure like Conor McGregor speaks up and talks on it, hey, everybody's talking about it now.
It's a fascinating tale. Will it have that Rocky Balboa Hollywood ending? We'll have to wait and see. Herman Kelly, President of the Irish Freedom Party. Always a pleasure to have your company. My favourite Irishman. Now, plenty more coming in next hour, including whether the Labour Party or the party of broken promises, because, of course, they said no more austerity. Today, 4 billion quid's worth. Last week, 5 billion quid's worth of benefit cuts. Does that sound like a party that don't believe in austerity? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. But now, here's your weather with Honor Krizik.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tonight, it should remain largely dry across the south with the clear skies. That means we can expect some mist and fog by the morning. A different story in the north though, cloud and outbreaks of rain moving in here as a result of this frontal system just starting to edge into western parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland into this afternoon. So more cloud here, some outbreaks of rain, largely light, but we could see the odd heavier outbreak across exposed coasts and hills. And this area of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southeast through the course of the night, moving into northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales through the early hours of the morning. But across the south and southeast, remaining largely dry, but with clear spells, likely to see some mist and fog through the morning. So most of the rain across Scotland should clear by the time we reach the early hours of the morning, but we can't rule out a few showers just skirting their way northwards across Scotland. Quite blustery here by the morning too. Across Northern Ireland, quite a murky start, some quite low cloud, some pretty grey skies by the time we reach the morning. And similar across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, cloud and some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. But across the south and southeast, a fairly bright start to the day and any mist and fog clearing quite quickly too. But this band of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southwards through the course of the morning, so any bright skies soon being replaced by cloudier ones, but any rain largely petering away by the afternoon. And to the north of this, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, some sunny spells breaking through the cloud too, and highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so feeling pleasant in the warm spring sunshine, and still rather mild across the south too, highs of 15 degrees here. Into the evening, any remnants of cloud and rain eventually clearing to the southeast, leaving largely clear skies over into the overnight period. So turning quite frosty, and once again we could see some mist and fog. And it's likely we're going to see more rain by the end of the week and turning quite windy too, and temperatures returning more towards average.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Lancashire, the M65 is shut westbound after a vehicle caught fire at junction 10 for Burnley and the A671. In Merseyside, the M58 is partly blocked westbound by a broken down lorry, and that's just before the Kirby turn-off at junction 1. In Hertfordshire, the M25 is blocked anti-clockwise after a collision. It's happened just by junction 17 for Maple Cross, with queues all the way back to Chorleywood junction 18.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could be a spring winner, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag and not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you, and it's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, before the general election, the Labour Party, if you remember, they promised us no more austerity. And yet today, Rachel Reeves is now eyeing up £4 billion worth of austerity in the form of public sector cuts. Free school dinners are allegedly next being axed. With U-turns on practically every election pledge, are Labour the party of broken promises? And talking of which, the Labour Party also promised to end asylum hotels. Yet today, they admitted they are here for years to come at a cost of an astonishing £5.5 million every single day. And worse, the government has admitted that building 1.5 million homes will help solve the asylum crisis. Do you remember back in the day voting for new builds for new asylum seekers? I didn't. And beer drinkers are foaming at the mouth after the British Beer and Pub Association today admitted that the average price of a pint of beer will soon top £5 across the entire nation. Well, the hospitality head honchos have blasted. The government must look at ways to keep pints affordable. Sobering news, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Did you ever vote for the notion of 1.5 million houses being built, not for British residents, but to help soak up the asylum system? I didn't. I don't think anybody did. And it certainly wasn't in the Labour Party's manifesto pledge. And yet today, we're expected to swallow the thin gruel that the asylum hotel bill of £5.5 million a day, which we all admit, everybody, even the Prime Minister himself, must come down, or that bill will come down, because the 1.5 million homes built can also help to ease the strain on hotels, ease the strain on other forms of temporary accommodation. Do you ever remember voting for the notion of putting people who come to our country illegally on dinghies straight into a new build? How does that make you feel at a time when I hear all the time from our viewers that their children themselves cannot afford the price of a new house in Great Britain? Get in touch usual ways, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do that. But now it's your headlines, and here's Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Martin. Very good evening to you. Our top stories. Sir Keir Starmer has vowed to take some money out of the government at this week's spring statement as ministers draw up plans to axe up to 5 times as many civil servants as previously planned. Rachel Reeves has confirmed departments will be asked to cut 15% from their budgets to save £2.2 billion a year by 2030. She has previously claimed only 10,000 jobs will be at risk. Will unions say any cuts will hit frontline services after years of underfunding by previous Conservative governments? Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffiths says the UK is facing a return to austerity.
The Chancellor's made some terrible decisions in her first budget. She absolutely clobbered business, 40 billion of tax rises, particularly on jobs, that national insurance jobs tax. And what that has meant is that business confidence was devastated, unemployment starting to rise, and now we're going to get this week lower growth forecasts for the UK. That's going to hit us all. Last time she was hitting farmers and pensioners and small businesses. This time around, it sounds like it's going to be disabled people on welfare and civil servants.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor has swerved questions about whether the UK is considering ditching a tax on big tech companies as part of a deal to appease President Trump and avoid US tariffs.
Digital services tax is hugely important. It brings in around £800 million a year and ensures that companies pay tax in the country that they are operating in. So we will continue to make sure that businesses pay their fair share of tax, including businesses in the digital sector.
MP's salary is to rise by 2.8% to £94,000 a year. The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority says it's in line with wider pay recommendations for public sector workers. However, it comes just a year after they were given a 5.5% pay rise and shortly before MPs vote on proposed cuts to the welfare bill, which could see an estimated 1 million disabled people lose their benefits. Morrison says hundreds of jobs are at risk as it continues to cut costs and restructure the business. The supermarket's planning to close 17 convenience stores and a range of on-site services like cafes, deli counters and pharmacies. It says 365 jobs are at risk over the next 4 months, but believes the majority of workers affected are expected to be moved into other roles. The Prime Minister's told councils to prove they're tackling potholes or face losing the cash to fix them. From the middle of next month, local authorities across England will get an extra £500 million for road maintenance, but councils will lose a quarter of that if they fail to put out annual progress reports. The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, says there must be accountability in the system.
We are asking local councils to report on how they are using the additional money that we are making available to them. Just before Christmas, we announced record investment of £1.6 billion. That's an increase of £500 million on the previous year, roughly a 40% uplift for every local authority. And if all of that money was used just on fixing potholes, that would equate to filling an additional 7 million potholes next year. But we want to make sure that this amount of money is spent wisely and that the taxpayer gets value for money.
Large crowds are gathering in Istanbul for a 6th night of demonstrations against the arrest of the city's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has described the protests as evil. He's blamed the opposition party for provoking a movement of violence. Well, more than 1,100 people have been detained after mass rallies broke out in a number of cities following İmamoğlu's arrest on Wednesday on charges of corruption. He says the charges are politically motivated. İmamoğlu is a key rival of President Erdogan. He's expected to go up against him in the general election in 2028. Demonstrators are also campaigning against what they say is the erosion of democracy. And bird flu's been detected in sheep in England for the first time. A single case was identified in Yorkshire during a routine check of livestock on a premises where the H5N1 virus had previously been confirmed in captive birds. No further infection of the virus, though, was detected in the remaining flock. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with more at 5:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cast your mind back to before the general election. Do you recall the Labour Party promising no more austerity? However, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is now eyeing up £4 billion worth in public sector cuts in a spring statement on Wednesday. And also today, we learned that asylum hotels won't end, as the Labour Party promised, again before the election. Instead, they'll continue for years at a cost of £5.5 million every single day. So with U-turns on practically every election pledge, of course, don't forget pensioners and farmers and the WASPy women, of the Labour Party, the party of broken promises. Well, let's briefly remind you of the Chancellor speaking at Labour's party conference back in September.
There will be no return to austerity.
Well, there's always a clip. And to discuss this, I'm now joined by GB News' political editor Chris Hope and the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Chris, let's start with you. On the one hand, we're expected to believe that before the election, no more austerity. It'll be the land of milk and honey. 14 years of Tory chaos, that's all gone now. The adults are back in charge. And yet reality bites and people are feeling the pinch. And nobody expected the Labour Party to act more like the Conservatives than the Conservatives. Public sector slashing the bill, foreign aid slashing the bill, benefits slashing the bill, school dinners might even be getting the chop under the Labour Party.
Well, about 3 weeks ago, I asked the Prime Minister that question, are you Nigel Farage in disguise? I think you suggested the question to him, didn't you, when he cut foreign aid, spend money on events. He looked a bit shocked by the response. But that is a reform UK policy, what they've done there. You can now fast forward into £5 billion worth of benefit cuts. This week's all about the OBR forecast. We're likely to see growth fall from 2% to 1%. The first words that the Chancellor will say when she unveils the forecast on Wednesday is the world has changed. She'll try and blame it on Donald Trump, Ukraine, a concern about all the extra money required for defence because of what Trump has done. But really, some of that blame, the Tories will say, is back on you, Chancellor, because you are the one who did that big tax increasing budget. And the result of that has been to put a dampener on employment. So you've got a lot of companies say they won't employ people now. You've got next week national insurance up by 2% for employers. You've got this big increase, which maybe is welcomed by some, of course, on a minimum wage, but it will squeeze quite tightly those companies that have pubs and restaurants and the like. And also we're going to see on Wednesday, crucially, and look out for this, the effect of that £5 billion cut in benefits. Is it 1 million affected? Is it more than 1 million as has been intimated? We'll wait and see. So, yeah, you could say, what is this government doing? Why were they elected? None of these things I talked about were in the manifesto just 8 short months ago.
Peter Edwards, let's bring you in now. A lot of people accuse Keir Starmer of being a shapeshifter, but nobody thought he'd be George Osborne. Nobody think Bridget Phillipson would be the new Maggie Thatcher milk snatcher. As a Labour representative, do you have any buyer's regret? This isn't the Labour Party as you would normally expect them to behave, is it?
Well, I would expect the Labour Party to behave in a hard-headed way and not to saddle future generations with debt. But let's zoom out from the big picture for a moment, Martin. If I burn your house down, I can't necessarily rebuild it in 6 or 9 months. It takes a bit longer. That's what we're seeing here with the economy. In terms of particular spending cuts, of which almost none so far have been announced because the spending review is yet to happen. There's a bit of leaking into the Monday papers where the individual departments are offering up some of the less palatable options that might be considered, and I've been through that process when I worked for Labour in opposition. But to take one example, we have no idea if it will happen, but if you cut £500 million from the 60 billion schools budget, that's less than 1%. So a cut of less than 1% is by no means austerity. OK,
Peter, so you're saying, for example, if the Conservative Party cut free school meals, you go, oh, no problem. It's a small rounding error, not at all cruel to children, not at all... Of course you wouldn't.
Well, the Conservatives and the Coalition didn't cut free school meals, and Labour hasn't done it. Again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. I'd be surprised if that was actually included. And, just to go into the Labour Party internal politics, every department has to offer up proposals, and there's one tactic where you offer up slightly more draconian proposals as a way of reaching a compromise, and this is one of them. But again, think about school meals, which often ebb and flow, sadly, the funding for them, depending on what's happening in the wider economy. We've got free school meals universal for the early stage primary school pupils. What we don't know is actually the impact on the poorest households versus middle income and affluent households. But, we're going around the houses. It's probably not going to happen, and it's not been announced yet.
It's got to be paid for somehow. I mean, unless they resurrect Jeremy Corbyn's magic money tree.
Everything has to be paid for. That's the point. It's £80 billion approx budget deficit. And remember, viewers are going to hear 23 departments being offered up for cuts this week. But we're paying tens of billions of pounds every year on debt interests. So whatever happens, the national debt is increasing, not shrinking.
I'm intrigued by what you said there, Peter, about the games that departments play. So they're worried about the spending review this summer. So the Education Department offers up unpalatable changes, cutting free school meals. That's never happened ever under a Labour government, removing tampons and sanitary products in the girls' loos, cutting dance, music and PE. Do you think this is basically an attempt to try and head off what is coming in the summer?
Well, it's an exercise that's been carried out seriously, and I say that because about 10 years ago, and the phrase is a bit hackneyed, I participated in a zero-based review. It's a bit of a clunky phrase, but for Labour's shadow Treasury team in opposition, and that was just with a handful of staff. Yeah. Now, of course, they've got the weight of the civil service, so they'll go even more into detail, and obviously they have more up-to-date spending information than perhaps the general public might have. So it's done with great detail and severity. But of course, you know, the best way you make any decision, from government to small companies, having a menu of options. Yeah. And as you said, some will be ghastly and grim, and some will be ones you can just about stomach at a time of flat economic growth.
Here's another one that you probably might try and dress up as something that the Labour Party, you know, don't normally do, but they're doing it. A digital tax break to tech billionaires. That's right. The Labour Party giving a tax break to Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. 2% tax raises £800 million a year. And suddenly, Donald Trump is saying, well, if you do that, there could be a trade war. Once again, no fangs from the Labour Party. They say they'll tax billionaires, but when another billionaire comes up and gets on his haunches, Donald Trump, they simply chicken out.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen, but the one thing we must not do, and I'd urge Labour not to do, is blow with the wind of Donald Trump. And it's not because I think, you know, Donald Trump is a total enemy, but he's totally unpredictable. America, where whoever is in power, will always be a close ally. But Donald Trump doesn't know what he's going to do tomorrow, let alone in the British government. So we can't have a serious economic plan on the basis of Donald Trump. So in that case, we've got to do what we think is morally right, but also what is economically pragmatic to retain the partnership. We all know Labour have a long-standing commitment to tax a little bit more the internet companies.
So the Tory party,
rebalance it for
hang
bricks
on a
and
minute,
mortar.
if the Tory party decided to give Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg an £800 million tax cut, you'd be OK with that? Oh, it's just balancing the books. Of course you wouldn't.
I don't want to give anything to Elon Musk. And I think, again, Labour or Tory equally view Elon Musk as a bit of a threat, because Elon Musk is trying to override democratic elected politics. He's saying things in favour of unspeakable characters like Tommy Robinson that no one in the House of Commons from any side would defend. And Elon Musk is very rich, but he's also a liability. So I don't think there's...
So why give him a tax break?
Well, I don't know if he's got one. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. But, you know, let's not talk about Elon Musk because, again, he's totally unpredictable, and in many cases he doesn't share our values either. We've got to do what's right for Britain while preserving some kind of partnership with America.
All right, let's next talk about another change of position, and that is the asylum hotel position. They were going to end. Simple word, end. Just like the boats were going to stop under Rishi Sunak. That didn't happen, and this isn't happening now either. Instead, we found out today they'll be housed in hotels for years to come at the cost of £5.5 million a day. And now we learn another nugget of information today that nobody was given the chance to vote on. 1.5 million new house builds could actually be used to soak up the asylum seeker overspill. Nobody voted for new builds for new asylum seekers.
The bill for putting up asylum seekers' hotels is far too high. It's taking ages to sort out.
So build a new house for them instead. Rachel Rain,
you know, Martin, you're challenging my ladies, you've got to let me answer. You know, the bill for asylum seekers in hotels is too high and it's unfair on taxpayers. No one's actually suggested an alternative. Again, it's a massive mess.
Close the borders.
It's a massive mess, 14 years in the making. Closing the borders tomorrow, which I think is a wrong idea, would have no impact on people staying in hotels in Skegness or Tower Hamlets or anyone else.
Deport them then.
But Martin, that's what you know. The level of appeals for people in the asylum system has gone up 500%.
Yeah, exactly, because they know they'll never get kicked out.
So would you take away the legal right to appeal?
It's about 80% of people who get here appeal and appeal and appeal and end up with the right to remain. Pictures on our screen now of an Afghani individual on TikTok. Look at this, Peter. He's posting. He's got a magical mystery tour through 8 or 9 foreign nations, all the way from Afghanistan all the way to our shores in a hotel there. Look, beautiful, fresh haircut. There's the flags of the countries he's travelled through. He's now at he's at the taxpayers' pleasure in Britain. We heard from the previous government they were going to stop the boats. They failed. We've heard that Keir Starmer is going to smash the gangs. That's failing. This makes a mockery of our country.
Would you take away the right to appeal?
I would probably. People from Afghanistan shouldn't be here in the first place.
No. Would you take away the right to appeal?
What's that got to do with it?
Because that's a contributor to the delay and to the cost.
Read their appeal, and you would look at them case by case and say, well, he's suddenly become a Christian. He's suddenly become gay. She suddenly can't go back to Nigeria because she's joined a terrorist organisation. The appeal process gives time after time after time for people to wriggle off the hook. You know it.
There's a different point about a small proportion of people have said they're gay when they're not and they face persecution, and I'm a Christian, and a few people have said they're from a faith that could be persecuted in their country of origin. But it goes back to the appeal process. We need appeals judged fairly and robustly. We will also need them to be judged more quickly. And if the number of appeals has gone up by 500%, that makes it tougher to do. But again, why are we having this debate just a few months into a Labour government? Because it's a mess that's 14 years in the making.
Well, and it's a mess that's getting worse. And more to the point, it's a mess that the Labour Party said they would deal with by ending hotels, and they patently are doing the precise opposite. That's why we're having this story today. Look, let's have some fun now. Some Donald Trump fury. No, it's not with Volodymyr Zelensky. The US president is not happy at all after posting a rant on Truth Social. Look at it. It's over this painting of him displayed at the Colorado State Capitol. He's lashing out at the governor, claiming the portrait is distorted. What do you make of this when you put it side by side with his official portrait in 2025? I reckon he looks about 50 years younger. If I was him, I'd take it on the chin. But, Mr. President, you can take some comfort in this shocker of a statue. Look at it. This Portuguese footballing legend, Cristiano Ronaldo, looking like the Elephant Man, is within doubt looking like Igor, like Quasimodo. So I think you've got off lightly. On a serious point, Chris, do politicians get so thin-skinned they care about paintings?
They do, I'm sure they do. And that is a funny, puffy picture there of Donald Trump. We are waiting, actually, for an update in the busts of the Prime Ministers. They stopped at John Major, so we're expecting a Tony Blair one and Gordon Brown, and so it goes on in Members' Lobby in House of Commons. So, yeah, this stuff matters, but they are often lampooned when they go wrong.
Do you think that's a bad picture there, Peter Edwards? I think it's quite flattering.
The one on the left, he looks very puffy, a bit like an overgrown schoolboy. But, you know, in Britain we've got this great tradition of warts and all. Can you remember who said that, Chris? Warts and all?
Oh, no.
Oliver Cromwell. So we've been doing this for about 400 years, paint me warts and all. I'm not sure any of us qualify for a picture or a bust just yet.
The good thing about this country is we fund statues through public subscription. So when they go up somewhere, they are paid for by all of us rather than the state, and that's a good thing.
Maybe soon we'll have a statue of Chris Hope. Something to dream for. Chris Hope and Peter Edwards, thank you very, very much indeed for joining me in the studio this hour. Now, we want to make your spring spectacular in our latest Great British giveaway with your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. The lucky sevens. These are the details you need to enter.
Spring has sprung with a Great British giveaway, and we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, coming up, farmers have continued their protests against the government once again today. But might there be another cause for their concerns on top of the inheritance tax changes? Might there be a hike in duty on red diesel? We'll find out soon. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the Spring Statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:27 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, today, a South Yorkshire Member of Parliament will be using a House of Commons debate to address the number of male suicides in the area he represents, saying that many men are suffering in silence. Well, Labour's Rother Valley Labour MP, Jake Richards, who will lead that debate, said the male suicide rate in Rotherham was higher than the national average. I'm delighted to say that I'm now joined in the studio by Jake Richards and also by Chris Hope, our political editor. Jake, welcome back to the show. Pleasure to have your company. Hugely important topic, one that I got very involved in a number of years back through International Men's Day. I lost a few friends to suicide. It's a tragedy, a stain on society. You're tabling a debate tonight. Tell us what motivated you to get into this topic, particularly in your constituency.
Well, look, I've been the MP for, about 8 months, Martin, and the thing that perhaps has shocked me more than anything is how often early in the morning or very late at night, I'll get a text from friends telling me that another bloke has taken their life. And look, before I was an MP, I was aware of it as an issue, and you read it in the newspapers or you see it on TV, but until you are an MP that then has to kind of confront and grapple with it, the scale of this is quite shocking. So we know that 100 men across the country take their own lives each week. In Rotherham, in my area, it's higher than the average. So this is a big problem. And I just don't think we talk about it enough. We talk a lot about suicide, and that's right, but there's a particular issue with men. 80% of suicides in Rotherham are men. So I want to start talking about men, this specific issue in my area, but of course across the country too.
And in particular, Jake, it's affecting men of a certain demographic. Those aged between 45 and 49 are the most likely. Working class men are the most likely, and it's builders, labourers, those whose bodies give up on them, so they begin a cycle towards benefit dependency, alcohol dependency, relationship breakdown, lack of access to their children, loneliness, isolation. This is the doom cycle that we're so desperately trying to break.
Yeah, look, exactly. Look, it's the biggest killer of men under 50, so that just gives us a sense of the scale of this again. And you're right, you know, you've just named there in that question about 10 different policy areas. And what I think is really important is that, you know, there isn't a switch that government can press to stop this. It isn't just on government or politicians to solve this, it's for all of us, actually. And so we need to be spending time sort of thinking about how we can make safe spaces for men to talk, to ask for help, to make sure that we're going to them. Because, as you say, we know certain groups are particularly susceptible to this. And there are amazing groups in my area. Andy's Man Club, which is a national charity. They've just set up one in Kiverton Park, as well as in Maltby, and my constituency do brilliant work. And I went to some of their meetings, a bit cynical, I'll be honest, and came out completely blown away. And so I'm really keen to be supporting them. And there are many, many others as well. So, yeah, look, you're right. There's a lot more government can do. And I'll be pushing government today and tonight in the debate. But I think this is actually a conversation for all of us, actually.
Great stuff. Chris?
Is it because men just bottle things up and don't talk things out? Is that why there's a higher rate amongst men than women?
I think definitely that there's some truth in that, isn't it? I mean, look, we all know, probably we're all guilty of it too. You know, you think you're being tough to kind of bottle it up, keep your chin up, get on with things, when actually it's better to ask for help sometimes. And I think we're all guilty of that a bit. I think there's also, you know, stresses on this notion, without getting too deep, notions of masculinity in the modern age. You know, what is being a man nowadays? In my area, you know, all the towns and villages in my constituency are mainly old pit towns and villages. So they were built on the backs of working men and women, but working men predominantly and down the pit. That's finished now. So what is the role for men in modern society, and how do we make sure that they don't feel victimised or attacked, as so often can seep into our culture a bit? So I want to start talking about them in a sensible way. You know, we need to be clear that women are also commit suicide and also suffer mental health problems, and that's really important. But I think there is a particular challenge here with men.
Do you know, in a previous life, I was the co-author of the most comprehensive academic report into British masculinity with my friend John Barry at University College London. Work, relationships and friendships are the pillars. If you're in good work, you're fulfilled. If you're in good relationships, you feel loved. And if you have great friendships, that's the sweet spot. Really? If all those start to break apart, we have an issue. Jake Richards, thank you for talking about this. It's a huge issue. You've got some guts to talk about it. Well done, son. Much, much appreciated. Thank you. And Chris, also always a pleasure. Now, if you found this content distressing, then please, you can call the Samaritans on 116 123. Now, if you're travelling home from work or school at the moment, then here is your traffic and travel update. And don't forget to stay with us on digital and radio.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems in Lancashire for the M65. The motorway has been blocked westbound at junction 10 at the Burnley exit since this morning after a lorry caught fire. Recovery work continues. In Tyne and Wear, the A19 remains shut from West Bolton and South Hilton, northwest of Sunderland, following a serious accident just north of the Tesco's roundabout. On the M62 in Greater Manchester, one lane's blocked westbound from 19 to 18 towards the M66. Following an accident, and in Carmarthenshire, the A40 is closed northeast of Llandalo due to an ongoing investigation. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Great stuff now. Lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including some sobering news as beer drinkers are foaming at the mouth after the British Beer and Pub Association today admitted the heartbreaking news that the average price of a pint of beer in Blighty will soon top £5 nationwide. And we're speaking to a pub landlord next with this sobering news. But first, here's your news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Martin. It's 5:33. Our top stories. Unions say as many as 50,000 people could lose their jobs as a result of the government cuts to the civil service. That's 5 times more than previously suggested by ministers and would reduce the size of Whitehall to levels last seen before the pandemic. Rachel Reeves has confirmed departments will be asked to reduce department budgets by 15% as they try to save £2.2 billion per year by the end of the decade. She claims, though, only 10,000 jobs will be at risk. Unions say any cuts will hit frontline services. MP salaries are to rise by 2.8% to £94,000 a year. The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority says it's in line with wider pay recommendations for public sector workers. However, it comes just a year after they were given a 5.5% pay rise, and it comes shortly before MPs vote on cuts to the welfare bill, which could see an estimated 1 million disabled people lose their benefits. Morrison's say hundreds of jobs are at risk as it continues to cut costs and restructure the business. The supermarket is planning to close 17 convenience stores and a range of on-site services. It says 365 jobs are at risk, but claims the majority of those workers affected will be moved into other roles. The government has admitted using hotels to house migrants, and the policy will continue for years, despite an election pledge to scrap it. A document published by the Treasury has blamed global instability. The reports found hotels, which are housing around 38,000 migrants, have made record profits from government contracts. That doesn't include an additional 66,000 others who are being housed in other forms of accommodation. The government says the overspend on migrant hotels formed part of a £22 billion black hole that they inherited from the Conservatives. Large crowds are gathering in Istanbul for a 6th night of demonstrations against the arrest of the city's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. The Turkish president has described the protests as evil. He's blamed the opposition party for provoking them. Well, more than 1,100 people have been detained. That includes journalists after mass protests in a number of cities across Turkey. It all broke out after İmamoğlu's arrest on Wednesday on charges of corruption, which he says are politically motivated. And the average price of a pint is set to surge past £5 for the first time due to cost hikes hitting the sector. Pub chiefs are warning that prices for customers will go up as they face higher running costs. The British Beer and Pub Association says the average pint is expected to go up around 21% to just over £5 a pint. And those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me just after 6 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
If you've read Spare, you'll know that Prince Harry's very open, isn't he, about his drug taking in the past. So it's going to be interesting to see if he was honest in his visa application.
Well, we're absolutely waiting for it. Yes, he admitted he took cannabis, cocaine and magic mushrooms, as we know in Spare, and also the Netflix series. He said that. There's been so much talk about it, and obviously Judge Carl Nichols originally said he refused to release any footage, saying that he basically because of Prince Harry's privacy. But as we know, Trump, border security and application of rule is one of his priorities. And I do see Harry as a pawn, really, for Trump and collateral. So everyone's waiting to see what happens. Tuesday is the day, D-Day. We don't know whether Prince Harry is quaking in his boots. But, he quit being a working royal. Well, did he get preferential treatment? We don't know. There is possible misconduct. Apparently, DHS says that actually releasing the paperwork won't shed any light onto how things work. But there are thoughts as well that he could have entered on a special visa. Now, this is an A1 visa that deals with immigration paperwork. And it's a special kind of visa for heads of states and royal people. So Prince Harry could have got through on that, but we're waiting to hear. It's D-Day tomorrow.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the father of a rape gang victim from Oldham has spoken exclusively to GB News about his daughter's abuse ordeal. She was subjected to violent sexual abuse and exploitation by 85 men across 3 years. And here's a bit of what he had to say to our national reporter, Charlie Peters.
Because it weren't my daughter. I so much wanted it to be. It'd be over.
But you've been a hero to somebody else's daughter. You saved her.
It don't count. I know it should, but it don't.
It's incredible reporting, and you can see the full version of that on GB News tonight at 7 p.m. with me. I'll see that on the show then. Superb stuff. Now, some pretty seriously bad news, because pubs are warning that the average cost of a pint could now exceed £5 nationwide for the first time in British history, as hospitality businesses grapple with rising labour and supply costs. Now, experts in the pub sector say that price hikes are necessary to help keep venues running following a raft of cost increases in Labour's October budget. Well, we can now speak with a pub landlord and great friend of the channel, Adam Brooks. Adam, how many times have we had the conversation about boozers feeling the pinch, with it being either COVID or fuel hikes or labour supply hikes, and now we have the perfect storm, £5 nationwide for the price of an average pint. It's heartbreaking.
It's never ending, Martin. This sector has come under so much attack over the last sort of decade, really. But I mean, some pubs are still recovering from COVID. I know I've still got a COVID loan that's got about 14 months left on that. But, Rachel Reeves is clueless with what they're doing here. They are targeting businesses, which is going to mean job losses, which is going to mean increased prices at the pubs. And we don't want to do this. I've had 2 emails today, Martin, from suppliers with price increases ranging from 3% to 6% on certain products. Now, I've got to go the same just to protect my margins. It's tough enough. A little backstreet pub like mine, I pay 80 grand a year rent, Martin. I pay £40,000 a year in electricity, gas and water. We have to claw this money back somehow. And it's going to mean certain shifts for certain people are going to have to be scaled back as well. This government is one that pretended it was for the working people. But this budget is going to put people out of work, lose shifts, they're going to be worse off, And then when they do decide to come to the pub or go to their local restaurant, they're going to be paying higher prices. And that is down to them. And there's no excuses. Rachel Reeves was warned of this by big business, by small businesses, and she's just not addressing it. They keep lying and saying this is good for business. I haven't found one business owner that thinks they're going to be better off from this budget. So, you know, we are being run by morons. I'm afraid to say it sounds harsh, but they are clueless. They have not got a clue what they're doing, Martin.
Yeah, let's be a little bit careful with the lingo there. Of course, that is your opinion, but fair play. But look, the costs that are being passed on to you, not only in supply issues, but also in terms of national insurance hikes. I mean, will that mean that you just can't take on as many people as you'd like to? You can't give them the shifts you'd like to, and you can't give them the pay rises that you'd like to?
100%, and even reinvesting back into the business. You know, I'd like to maybe give it a little redecorate this year as well. Where's that money coming from? So not just investing in people, but investing in premises and making them work and making them busier. It's just unsustainable. And as I said in the last segment, there's people that are going to lose shifts because of this, because at the end of the day, it is a business and it has to run tight, you know, and we are still paying off loans from COVID. Energy prices, as I said, my utilities are almost £40,000 a year, and it's a small backstreet pub. You've been there, Martin. People do not understand the average costs of a pub, and especially these MPs. They don't know what they're doing. I'm sorry, you know, even Sacha Lord, who's big in hospitality, he said it yesterday on a programme. What they're doing is so counterproductive. You know, it's going to cost jobs. Prices are going up. How are they helping anyone? I just don't understand it. If a business goes skint, they're not getting any tax. They're not collecting any VAT, any national insurance, nothing. So surely you'd want to try and help businesses to keep that generation of money coming for the Treasury. I don't get it. I don't get their thinking.
Yeah, and of course, Sacha Lord, I believe he advised Andy Burnham. He's at the Night Times of Manchester, close to the Labour Party. Even he is feeling the pinch. And Adam Brooks
he's a Labour donor as well, Martin. A Labour donor that is attacking this Labour government as being clueless, really, on what they're doing.
Okay, and just on a final point, Adam Brooks, you know, but living and drinking in London, a £5 pint is something I can only dream of. It's more like £7. Sometimes I paid $7.90 for a pint the other week. If I told my dad that, he'd probably give me a good old thick here. Adam Brooks, thank you very much for joining me on the station. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you. Now, moving on. If you're in search of some winter sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. We'll see some warm sunshine across parts of the Mediterranean over the next few days, but plenty of showers too. And certainly on Tuesday, a mixture of sunshine and showers across the Canaries, across Madeira. Fewer showers across Spain and Portugal, so some sunshine here. But notice across the central part of the Med, plenty of showers, some heavy, even thundery showers around, and brighter skies the further southeast you go across Turkey and Cyprus. Over the next few days, showers mainly in the east, brighter skies the further west you go.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tonight, it should remain largely dry across the south, but with the clear skies, that means we can expect some mist and fog by the morning. A different story in the north though, cloud and outbreaks of rain moving in here as a result of this frontal system, just starting to edge into western parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland into this afternoon. So more cloud here, some outbreaks of rain, largely light, but we could see the odd heavier outbreak across exposed coasts and hills. And this area of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southeastwards through the course of the night, moving into northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales through the early hours of the morning. But across the south and southeast, remaining largely dry, but with clear spells, likely to see some mist and fog through the morning. So most of the rain across Scotland should clear by the time we reach the early hours of the morning, but we can't rule out a few showers just skirting their way northwards across Scotland. Quite blustery here by the morning too. Across Northern Ireland, quite a murky start, some quite low cloud, some pretty grey skies by the time we reach the morning, and similar across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, cloud and some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. But across the south and southeast, a fairly bright start to the day, and any mist and fog clearing quite quickly too. But this band of cloud and rain will continue to sink its way southwards through the course of the morning, so any bright skies soon being replaced by cloudier ones, but any rain largely petering away by the afternoon. And to the north of this, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, some sunny spells breaking through the cloud too, and highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so feeling pleasant in the warm spring sunshine, and still rather mild across the south too, highs of 15 degrees here. Into the evening, any remnants of cloud and rain eventually clearing to the southeast, leaving largely clear skies over into the overnight period, so turning quite frosty, and once again we could see some mist and fog, and it's likely we're going to see more rain by the end of the week and turning quite windy too, and temperatures returning more towards average.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 to 6. Let's go live now to Donald Trump, who is hosting a cabinet meeting at the White House.
I'd like to see the Fed lower interest rates. That's just my opinion, because things are coming down. We have inflation under control. Tremendous amounts of money will be soon coming in from tariffs, which is about time that we were able to partake. We've been ripped off by every country on that basis, and it's about time. But that will be, I think, treated very fairly. Will be very fair. But the money that we're talking about is rather astronomical. And it should be, because we put years and years. I was able, in the first term, we had a great first term with the highest stock price increase ever, all the different things that we had. But one of the things, we took in a lot of money in tariffs, and I had just started that process. And we had to slow it down because of the COVID. We didn't go forward. We did a very good job with COVID, but that was something that happened to the whole world. It was a shame. What a shame. All those people dead, and all of the problems that it caused for countries far worse. I mean, some countries still haven't recovered. Economically, they haven't recovered. But we took in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs just starting the process. But this is a program that's going to be, I think, unbelievable for our country. And I think it's treating other countries very fairly, very, very fairly. I'd like to ask, if I might, Sean Duffy to say a few words about the air traffic control situation. You know, there were some mishaps, one in particular, the helicopter crashing into the plane. We have a system that's 40 years old. They spent tens of billions of dollars trying to patch it up and, you know, make it work, but it doesn't work. And my pilot says they use different systems. They don't want to use our system. It's so obsolete. And it's an obsolete, horrible thing that happened with respect to it. And we were going to, I said, day one, if this happens, if we are successful, we're going to have to get a brand new, modern, top-of-the-line air traffic system. And I think I can say that I've been working a little bit with Sean on it, but Sean's been working hard on it, and with his new person at FDA, who's going to be terrific, by the way. And maybe you want to talk to them about that, because we need safety in the air, total safety in the air, and this will give that to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. We had a conversation on Friday
Again, our air traffic control system, as we talked about maybe privately or I don't know publicly with all of you, but we have decades of ideas and billions of dollars, and no progress is ever made on any of these initiatives. Air traffic control is the same thing. And so we're having a conversation about building a state-of-the-art, brand new, best technology, envy of the world air traffic control system. And what's interesting from the DOGE team is they'll look and say, well, what is the problem? Why hasn't this been built? This is about safety. This is about people's lives. All of you fly. Your family flies. Why hasn't it been done? And the problem is in government, it takes way too long. So technology changes and money changes and administrations change. We have to do this fast, which is why we need the partnership from the Congress to give us the money up front. The best ideas and the best technology available in the world, we're going to build in the system. I think, Mr. President, we can do it in 3 years. I think Trump Tower was built in 3 or 3.5 years. I think we could match the Trump Tower time frame.
2 years.
Okay.
Good 2 years.
Maybe not that good, but about 3 years. And again, we have to choreograph because again, our towers are operational, keeping planes in the air. So we got to choreograph this, but we can do it in short order. If I can just make one other point, Mr. President, we're $36 trillion in debt. You've never had a DOGE. We've never come in and looked at our government the way, Mr. President, you've looked at this government and said there's too many people, there's contracts, fraud, waste, and abuse. And so we've had a few bumps in the road as we've gone through this process, but if you look around this room, everybody has seen how the process has evolved, and everyone appreciates some of the insight and technical support that we've gotten to make this government more efficient, to make it more responsive to the American people. And so, again, when you have a new system like this, you'll get some bumps. But things are rolling now. The last 3 weeks have been much, much better as our teams have integrated and we're working to deliver for the American people. And I would say some of the press had made comments last time about what happened in the last meeting. We had a great conversation in the last meeting. Elon and I had a great call after the meeting, and so sometimes the reporting can be a little bit off. I love the analysis that you guys do when you're not in the room. But I would just note that we're working well together, Mr. President, and the whole team here is working well together.
Well, actually, we decided to see you after the cabinet meeting instead of before, and I think that's nice. But if you think about it, I guess never in history has anybody invited you to a cabinet meeting. And we're very open and transparent, and we had a very good meeting today. So, I mean, you're standing here, you're seeing what the result of the meeting is. I think we're doing an amazing job for essentially 8 weeks on the job. I think it's there's never been anything like it. Did you have a question, please?
Two, actually, if you don't mind. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. One, actually, to follow up on the Attorney General's comments, and then one for you. You said that you're now preparing to prosecute examples of fraud across federal agencies that have been referred to you. Is that what you said?
We are working with a team. We have a team of attorneys in place working with Elon's incredible team, helping us, taking referrals from the cabinet members. You know, these are your tax dollars. And a lot of it is just abuse, a lot of it's waste. But if it's fraud, we are investigating it, and we're coming. We are looking at multiple cases of fraud throughout the federal government.
One for you, Mr. President. Greenland is confused about the Second Lady and the National Security Advisor visiting this week. They're concerned that this is further provocation, whatever it is you ultimately want for Greenland. Could you further explain why they're going? What is the ultimate end goal when it comes to Greenland?
Yeah, well, not provocation. This is friendliness, not provocation. We're dealing with a lot of people from Greenland that would like to see something happen with respect to their being properly protected and properly taken care of. They're calling us, we're not calling them. And we were invited over there, and I thought it would be I have great respect for the wife of our of our great vice president. I think she's she's a brilliant woman. She's a very nice woman, and she loves the concept of Greenland. And so she's going there, and I think Marco's going there, and some others are going there. But we've been invited, and they really like the idea because they have been somewhat abandoned, as you know. They haven't been taken good care of. And I think Greenland's going to be something that maybe is in our future. I think it's important. It's important from the standpoint of international security. And if you look at the ships outside of Greenland, you have Russia, you have China, you have lots of different people and lots of different places, and it cannot go on the way it is. It's not going to go on the way it is. I'll make a statement. It's not going to happen. So they're going there, and that's purely friendship.
Who's doing the inviting? You said people.
A lot of people, yeah. People from Greenland are asking us to go there. We have many, many requests from many, many people, some officials too.
Mr. President,
yes,
I ask you about economic forecasts. I saw one economic forecast coming out from the OECD this past week. They are forecasting stagflation for the United States, a downtick in terms of GDP growth. Do you agree with that forecast? What do you see over the course of 2025 for our
Well, we inherited a very, very bad and perilous situation from a group of people. Again, we just got here from a group, and this takes a long time to develop, from a group of people that truly didn't know what they were doing. And you see that with not only costs, you see that with all of these fake contracts that have been given out. So we inherited a bad situation, but I think we're going to have an economy that booms. I think when it all kicks in, it's not going to take very long, because some of these people that announce that they're going to spend billions of dollars, I mean, literally, Apple is spending $500 billion. They've never made anything close to that to do that. They're building plants here instead of China, instead of other places. When it all happens, and it's going to happen very soon, these are people that are already, in many cases, they're already starting. They just announced